Guys, welcome back to a brand new episode of the J All Day NFL Show. Today we're talking about Monday Night Football. Green Bay Packers at home versus the Philadelphia Eagles. We're going to preview this game. I'm going to give you my thoughts on the matchups to watch out for, where these teams are at going into Week 10, and who I ultimately think wins this game, guys. Today's video is brought to you by Underdog. $5 in, get $100 in bonus funds if you use the J All Day promo and the link in the description down below. So much fun to play on their fantasy platform. Make sure you guys check that out. Now, into the Monday Night Football game! NFL fans, if you end up liking this content, gotta do it. Hit that like button, hit the hype button, and subscribe to the channel to get more previews of your favorite NFL games. All right, here's the metrics right here, guys, to the left of your screen. Power rank overall, Eagles at 7, Packers at 4. How they have them at 4 with losses to the Browns and the Panthers blows my freaking mind. Defense is about even at 11 and 12 respectively. Offense, Eagles coming in at 6 and the Packers coming in at 4. But no Tucker Kraft. Remember that, guys, right? So percent of the plays that are runs, both coming in that 42-ish% range, and 58% for passes, right? So the spread right now, plus 1.5. It was at plus 2.5 earlier this week. There is some money coming in on the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Bet percentage, 83% of bets are coming in on the Philadelphia Eagles, right? So the public likes the Eagles in this spot. So that's always a little bit nerve-wracking because who knows? Here comes the money line, checking it out, right? The over-under and the spread, right? There it is right there, guys. All right. Here are some health updates for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? Ojomo is questionable. Nolan Smith is set to return. He is practicing. Jurgens is questionable. They also have added Brandon Graham and Jalen Phillips to this roster, right? And here we go. Micah Parsons is questionable. Reed on IR. Tom is questionable. Tucker Kraft on IR. Edge Cooper, Watson, and Lucas Van Ness all questionable in this spot, right? So we definitely want to keep an eye on this injury report as we get closer to kickoff on Monday Night Football. The Eagles have won 2 games in a row over the Giants and the Minnesota Vikings. In the middle is the result. The spread bet is in this right-hand column right here. We took a look at the regular season. Browns and the Panthers losses there, and they had 3 wins in a row, not versus the best teams in the world. The Bengals, the Cardinals, and the Steelers have been up and down so far this year. The Eagles definitely have a tougher schedule for sure. The Eagles got the Giants twice, the Vikings, Broncos, Buccaneers, Rams, Chiefs, Cowboys. Tough little stretch there for the Bird Gang, guys. Now, I want to move over to the depth chart and the matchups, right? So we're going to zoom out a little bit and we get a better look at what's cooking here. Philadelphia Eagles offensive line is looking good and healthy. Mailata and Johnson, the tackles, lead the way. We got A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith. A.J. Brown set to return from injury. And Saquon Barkley hasn't really got it going so far this year, but we'll have to see. I'm going to put this defense into nickel because that's where most of these teams kind of live in today's NFL game, right? So, key matchups, right? We got 2 cornerbacks that aren't particularly great. Valentine playing okay. 70 overall grade. Pass rush grade, not so good. Run defense grade, but the coverage grade, pretty solid at 73. And we got Kassan Nixon, who's really struggled for the last several years, especially in coverage, And these cornerbacks are not very, involved in the run game at all whatsoever, right? So this is kind of how they're lining up. And the matchups are obviously Micah Parsons and Gary versus this offensive line. Can they get involved in the backfield, right? And kind of disrupt what Jalen Hurts wants to do here offensively. I do think these cornerbacks are going to struggle to cover these Philadelphia Eagles wide receivers, but they do have good safeties. McKinney and Williams are playing pretty good football, and Edge Cooper is one of my favorite players in last year's draft. But then they got to cover Goddard, who's looked really good so far this year. So this is going to be a good matchup. I was really surprised how much this D-line and linebacker group got shredded by the Panthers' offensive line and run attack. They really ran the ball down their throats. They didn't really have any answers for Rico Dowdle. So I think if that struggle continues, we could see Saquon Barkley have a really, really big game here, guys. And I'm not sure if Walker and Cooper are going to be able to stick with Goddard down the seam. So we could take a look at that for sure. I think Goddard could have an interesting game in this spot for the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, if we flip it over, put the Eagles on defense and Packers on offense, we see the offensive line outside of Tom has struggled pretty hard for the Green Bay Packers, especially the interior part of this offensive line. And they got a heavy dose of really talented players. We got Jalen Phillips going against Zach Tom. That's going to be a really, really good matchup. Phillips coming over from the Miami Dolphins. And then we're also going to get Nolan Smith back. So we're going to have to see. He'll probably be, I don't know if he's going to line up on what side, but Jalen Hunt is not going to be the starter in this spot, guys. Nolan Smith is going to be there for sure, and they're going to sprinkle in Brandon Graham as well. So that's a really interesting spot. And then the Jahad Campbell's in this rotation along with Zach Bond and Nakobe Dean. So Jahad Campbell is going to be used on this D-line as well. So a lot of firepower on this D-line for the Philadelphia Eagles, right? And they did bring in Jair Alexander over from the Baltimore Ravens. Is he going to play in this spot? We will have to see. But getting Nolan Smith back and adding Phillips and Brandon Graham to this already pretty good defensive line. And Jalen Carter has been fighting through some injuries, right? So I expect him to have a big game against a pretty mediocre interior offensive line, for the Green Bay Packers. Remember, Tucker Kraft is out, right? Luke Musgrave is going to be in his stead. Hasn't really been a pass catcher in his career, right? Pretty limited that way. He's definitely not a Tucker Kraft, a guy that could take over whole football games. And that's going to, put more pressure on these wide receivers with Dobbs and Golden and Watson. Watson is a big, tall, powerful outside X wide receiver at 6'5", 208. That is a mismatch for all the corners for the Philadelphia Eagles. I do like Quinyon Mitchell, and he plays with toughness and grit, but at only 6 foot tall, Watson's going to have some advantages on deep balls down the field, right? And I don't know what's going to happen with the outside corner spot. Are they going to move Cooper DeJean outside at some point? That remains to be seen, right? And I do want to see the Eagles safeties, Blankenship and Makuba, have not really particularly played well. So Tucker Kraft being out is a huge boost for the Philadelphia Eagles, because I think Tucker Kraft would have found some success either being covered by safeties or these linebackers, right? So that's a huge loss. Now, another matchup is Josh Jacobs running behind this offensive line against a pretty stout Eagles front seven, especially with those additions of Jalen Phillips and our boy Brandon Graham coming back out of retirement. And Nolan Smith is set to return from injury. As far as we know right now, Nolan Smith is practicing and set to play, right? So if we take a look at this line, Rashad Walker hasn't really excelled anywhere in the 60s in both running and passing. Banks is a better pass blocker. They paid him a lot of money, and they're getting very mediocre production. Terrible at run blocking so far this year. And Jenkins, the center, solid pass blocker, but again, the running game is being affected by lackluster performance. And Jordan Morgan, the first-round pick from last year, has really, really underperformed his draft stock there coming out of Arizona. Terrible pass blocker and run blocker. He's just overall not been good all year long. And Zach Thomas, the man, still looks really, really good. Excellent run blocker. Not the best pass blocker in the world. So Jalen Phillips could see some success coming off the edge there, him or Nolan Smith, whoever lines up against him. I think Fangio is going to line them up all over the place. Big, big, big game for seeding here in the NFC, right? This is a really important game for both of these teams. So now, who do I ultimately think wins this game, and how do I think? I think whoever runs the ball more effectively, yards per carry wise, and overall total yards wins this football game. I think that's number one. And two, can the Eagles cornerbacks and safeties step up a little bit? They haven't been playing particularly well. And since that, can Golden, Dobbs, and Watson take advantage of those opportunities, guys? That's what those two things are really where I think this game is going to, be won and lost in the trenches. I really think the biggest matchup is the Eagles D-line versus this Packers offensive line. I really think who's ever more successful doing that is ultimately going to win this game. And I do think the Eagles offensive line getting healthy is going to be a huge deal. Rico Dowdle and the Panthers offensive line, who's good but not great, had a lot of success versus these Packers last week. I think the Eagles offensive line is going to have a field day. I like Saquon Barkley in this spot. With that, I'm rolling with the Philadelphia Eagles. 27-23. Eagles get it done. Go Birds. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for being a part of the community. Peace.